They threw Brenna Cale's soot ledger into the Treasury Furnace and called the fire an audit. That was how the Dragon Court preferred erasure. Not with blood, not with chains, but with ceremony clean enough for powerful men to stand near it without smelling guilt on their own sleeves. The Treasury Furnace vault lay beneath the coronation hall, carved from black basalt and veined with old gold. Dragonfire burned behind a bronze grate large enough to swallow a carriage, and every coin seal in the kingdom had passed through that heat before touching royal coffers. Tonight, it would swallow her work. Brenna stood before the furnace with soot under her nails and no account key at her belt. That absence hurt more than the watching court knew. She had carried keys for 7 years. Grain locks, flight wages, emergency store chests, widow stipends, border ash funds, dragon oil allowances. She knew which villages paid late because frost killed their goats, which dragon crews needed double hazard wages over winter cliffs, which nobles delayed repayment until a lesser clerk could be blamed for the whole. Numbers did not frighten her. Men who hated numbers did. Lord Treasurer Malrec Dain held her ledger in both hands, as if touching filth with gloves of gold thread. He was narrow-faced, silver-haired, and beautifully dressed in ash-black velvet, the kind of man who had learned to make greed look like discipline. Around him stood nobles with unpaid debts hidden beneath pearl collars, war merchants with clean rings, and treasury scribes who had once lowered their eyes when Brenna asked why border protection costs had been moved under her seal. None of them lowered their eyes tonight. "False accounting," Malrec announced, his voice ringing against the vault stone. "Unauthorized fund movement. Concealment of crown expenditure. Fabrication of emergency dragonflight costs." Brenna looked at the ledger. Its cover was blackened leather, stained from years of coal dust and ink. It had no jewels, no silver corners, no noble crest. Only numbers. Soot numbers, written after midnight. Smudged columns. Hard totals, the kind of truth that did not flatter anyone. Dragon King Ardyn Voss stood beside the furnace stair. He had not taken the ledger from her hand. That was the kind of mercy kings used when they wished to remain clean. Tall, dark-haired, and broad across the shoulders, Ardyn wore coronation black, trimmed in dragonbone white. His eyes were molten gold beneath a cold brow, and the faint scale shadow at his throat pulsed whenever the furnace breathed. In 3 days, he would stand above the crown fire and be named full Dragon King before every border lord and merchant prince in the realm. A scandal tonight could crack that ceremony, so he had allowed the treasurer to handle it. Brenna had seen him read Malrec's summary that morning, not her ledger. The summary. 3 pages clean enough to command. 3 pages saying her accounts were unstable, her transfers unauthorized, her figures dangerous to coronation credit. Ardyn had trusted them because a clean accusation was easier to face than a dirty treasury. That was the part that settled cold in her chest. "Brenna Cale," Ardyn said. Her name sounded different in his voice. Not cruel, not kind. Worse. Official. "Did you move crown funds without full treasury approval?" "Yes." The nobles stirred. Malrec's mouth softened. Ardyn's gaze sharpened. "Did you conceal those transfers from the formal coronation balance?" "Yes." A richer murmur moved through the vault. Brenna did not flinch. She had learned long ago that truth without context was a knife anyone could borrow. Ardyn stepped down 1 stair. "Why?" Malrec lifted the ledger slightly. "Majesty, the evidence speaks clearly enough. Further delay only allows sentiment to cloud debt." Brenna turned toward him. "Debt is already clouded. That is why you need fire." The treasurer's eyes cooled. "You mistake destruction for purification." "No," she said. "I mistake nothing. For 1 breath." The furnace hissed lower. Ardyn noticed. So did Brenna. Malrec moved quickly. By treasury law, corrupted ledgers must be burned before a coronation seal. If the figures are false, the fire will consume them. If they are true, The crown may rebuild from clean accounts. Brenna almost laughed. Clean accounts. The cruelest fiction ever sold to hungry villages. Ardyn looked at her. Do you deny falsifying the ledger? I deny being the first hand that touched the lie. His jaw tightened. Good. Let the sentence land somewhere. Malrec turned to the guards. The ledger. 2 furnace guards took it from him. Brenna's hands curled once at her sides. She did not reach for it. That would have made her look desperate. They wanted desperate. They wanted a clerk weeping over ink, a guilty woman pleading with numbers no one wished to read. She gave them nothing, except the stillness they had always mistaken for weakness. The guards opened the bronze grate. Heat rolled out. Several nobles stepped back. Brenna did not. Her face burned. Her eyes watered. Still, she watched as the soot ledger was placed onto the iron tray and pushed into dragonfire. The cover caught first. Then the pages. Years of midnight sums bent, blackened, curled inward. Malrec exhaled softly. Ardyn stood very still. The ledger burned, but the numbers did not. They lifted from the pages like insects made of ember. One by one, glowing figures crawled through the fire, red, gold, and alive, dragging themselves across the iron tray. A 7, a 3, 2 9s, a row of debt marks, a village tithe seal, a dragonflight wage code. They did not vanish in the furnace heat. They walked out of it. The first number dropped onto the black vault floor and left a burning trail. Then another. Then hundreds. The court stumbled back as living embers spread across the stone, arranging themselves into columns no hand was writing. The furnace roared as if trying to swallow them again. But the numbers kept crawling. Brenna closed her eyes once, not in surprise. In grief? Because she had known the ledger was true. She had not known it was angry. The burning numbers climbed the vault wall behind Ardyn Voss and formed their first line in living fire. These debts were not born in her name. The first line of fire did not fade. These debts were not born in her name. It burned across the basalt wall behind Dragon King Ardyn Voss, bright enough to turn every gold collar in the Treasury Furnace vault the color of blood. The living numbers crawled beneath it in restless rows, ember figures, dragging tails of red light over the stone, as if the vault itself had become a page the nobles could no longer close. Lord Treasurer Malrec Dain recovered first. Of course he did. Furnace distortion, he said, voice sharp but controlled. Old soot ink sometimes reacts to dragonfire. These are remnants, Majesty, not testimony. A debt mark crawled over his boot. Malrec stepped back. Brenna Cale watched him move and said nothing. She knew better than to answer too soon. Men like Malrec did not fear denial. They feared a quiet room where everyone had time to read. Ardyn did not look at her. Not yet. He looked at the burning numbers, then at the furnace, then at the half-ash tray where her ledger had collapsed into black curls. His jaw was tight enough to cut shadow. What debt? He asked. Malrec turned. Majesty, corrupted numbers cannot be treated as crown record. I asked what debt? The furnace roared once. The numbers answered before Malrec could. They gathered low on the floor, then climbed the left wall in a narrow column. Ashford Border Village Dragonflight Emergency 3-night runs. A nobleman near the back whispered. Ashford paid nothing. Brenna's eyes shifted toward him. Ashford had nothing left to pay. The court turned on her. She kept her hands still. That was the old habit of survival. When powerful men accused you of stealing, do not reach for proof. Do not point. Do not tremble. Let the numbers move first. Malrec's mouth thinned. Ashford's costs were not approved through formal protection allotment. No, Brenna said, because the formal allotment was closed before winter smoke reached them. Ardyn finally looked at her, not softly, not with belief, with the first dangerous edge of attention. You moved dragonflight funds to Ashford. I paid pilots who had already flown. A murmur crossed the vault. Ardyn stepped down from the furnace stair. From what account? Brenna's gaze did not leave him. The hidden ash reserve. Malrec seized the words. There. Unauthorized access to restricted crown stores. Brenna turned to him. Restricted from whom? Villages under attack, or treasurers who preferred them cheaper dead? Several nobles drew breath. Ardyn's gold eyes sharpened. Careful. She looked back at him. I was careful for 7 years. That is why your borders still have villages to tax. The lines struck the vault cleanly. The living numbers flared. Ardyn did not answer quickly. That was not mercy. Not yet. It was only the first crack in certainty. Malrec lifted a gloved hand toward the burning wall. Majesty. This is exactly the behavior described in my report. Emotional justification. Unauthorized movement. A clerk disguising theft as compassion. Brenna laughed once. It was too tired to be cruel. If I had stolen, my hands would be softer. The furnace hissed. One ember number crawled up her sleeve and stopped at the ink scar near her wrist. It did not burn her. It pulsed once, like a coin, remembering touch. Ardyn saw. So the numbers answer you? Malrec said coldly. No, Brenna replied. They answer arithmetic. The ember left her wrist and returned to the wall. A second line formed beneath Ashford. Pilots paid after flight. Dragon oil, advanced by Brenna Cale. Wounded, evacuated. 42. The court went quiet. 42 was not an accusation. It was weight. 42 bodies carried out before enemy riders reached the grain road. 42 names that would have become ash if dragonflight captains waited for seal, approval, and treasury convenience. Ardyn stared at the line. His voice lowered. Why was this not in the coronation balance? Brenna looked at Malrec. Malrec smiled faintly, warning hidden under polish. She looked back at Ardyn. Because emergency villages make a treasury look weak before coronation. And you concealed that weakness? No. I concealed the people who caused it, until I had enough proof to keep them from calling rescue theft. The numbers scattered. For a moment, the wall became chaos. 7s, 2s, oil marks, wage codes, village seals, debt arrows. Then they reorganized into 3 names. Ashford, Grammar Row, Low Belford. Ardyn knew those villages. Everyone did. They were the 3 border settlements listed in council reports as survived by strategic withdrawal. Brenna's voice cut through the heat. They did not withdraw. They were flown out. The furnace flame bent sideways. Malrec's face changed for the smallest breath. Ardyn saw it. This time, he did not look away. What else did the ledger record? He asked. Brenna's answer came flat. Enough that Lord Malrec needed it burned before your crown fire. Malrec snapped. Majesty, she is poisoning the vault with living fraud. The burning numbers surged up the wall behind him. Not all of them. Only one column. The figures crawled over the gold treasury seal, carved into stone and arranged themselves into a new line, slower than before, as if dragging truth through old ash, formal protection denied. Private flight sold elsewhere. Brenna closed her eyes. There it was. The first door. Not the whole crime. Only enough to show the treasury had 2 faces, one that denied villages, and one that sold dragons to someone richer. Ardyn's hand curled at his side. Malrec spoke too quickly. Private flight contracts are crown instruments. The numbers burned brighter. A final row of embers crawled from the furnace mouth and formed beneath the line. Buyer name withheld under treasurer seal. The buyer name did not appear. That made the vault colder than fire should have allowed. The burning numbers held their line across the treasury wall, bright and stubborn beneath the carved gold seal. Buyer name withheld under treasurer seal. No one in the Treasury Furnace vault moved for 3 breaths. Then Lord Treasurer Malrec Dain gave a quiet, polished laugh. A sealed buyer clause is not a crime. Crown flight contracts often conceal names for military safety. Brenna Cale looked at him through the heat shimmer. Military safety does not hide from border villages that are already burning. His eyes narrowed. Dragon King Ardyn Voss stepped off the furnace stair and crossed the black vault floor. The living numbers parted around his boots, not bowing, not fleeing, only making room as embers made of arithmetic dragged themselves aside. He stopped before the wall. "Open the buyer seal." Malrec's face remained composed. "Majesty, sealed treasury clauses require 3 keys: Crown authority, Treasurer authority, and witness accounting." Ardyn turned his head. "You have the Treasurer key." "I do. I have Crown authority." Malrec's smile thinned. "And the witness accountant has just been accused of corruption." Brenna felt the vault turn toward her. There it was, the old trap. Use her hands for years, then call them dirty when they pointed at the men above her. She did not step forward. "If I am corrupt, burn the numbers." The furnace roared behind her. The numbers did not burn. A few nobles looked away. Malrec did not. Living soot is not lawful testimony. "No," Brenna said. "It is what testimony becomes when men burn the paper." Ardyn looked at her then. Not kindly. Not yet. But longer than before. "What does witness accounting require?" he asked. Brenna's throat tightened. For 7 years, no king had asked her that in a room full of men who owed her silence. The question was late. Late enough to be almost insulting. Still, truth needed openings, even narrow ones. "A witness accountant must name the column she entered," she said. "The fire then measures whether the column remembers her hand." Malrec spoke quickly. "Majesty, allowing her to touch the active soot will contaminate the display." Brenna turned toward him. "Numbers are not wine. They do not spoil because a woman breathes near them." One of the younger scribes almost smiled. Almost. Ardyn saw that too. "Name the column," he said. Brenna walked toward the wall. The heat from the burning numbers warmed her face without burning it. Ember digits crawled near her sleeve, restless and familiar. She stopped before the line that mentioned private flight. Her voice stayed even. "Column 9, emergency dragonflight diversion. Entered after Graymer Rowe's distress bell. Revised after Lord Treasurer denied formal protection. Balanced against hidden ash reserve to prevent pilot mutiny." Malrec's voice hardened. "That is not how the column was described in Treasury report." "No," Brenna said. "That is how I wrote it before you renamed it misallocation." The numbers flared. A column opened beneath her hand, without her touching the wall. "Column 9, original hand. Brenna Cale." A second line followed. Description altered after entry. Ardyn went still. Malrec lifted his chin. Descriptions are revised for clarity before royal summary. Brenna looked at Ardyn. "Then ask what he clarified it into." Ardyn's gaze did not leave Malrec. "What was the revised description?" Malrec answered too smoothly. "Unverified border expenditure." The numbers crawled across the wall in a hot red wave. They gathered around the phrase and struck through it with burning lines. Beneath the false description, older figures emerged. Pilot wages, dragon oil, wing harness repairs, frostburn salves, ash rations, village evacuation tallies. Not theft. Movement. Desperate. Ugly. Necessary movement. Then the numbers shifted again. One amount separated from the rest. Large private payment received same night. Brenna closed her eyes once. She had seen that imbalance. She had chased it through soot margins until dawn, only to find the buyer name sealed beyond her account key. Ardyn read the line. "Same night as Graymer Rowe?" "Yes," Brenna said. Malrec said, "Private contracts often overlap emergency costs." Brenna opened her eyes. Not with the same dragonflight crew. The vault changed. Subtle. Dangerous. Dragonflight crews were not coins. They could not be spent in 2 places at once. If the same wing crew had been marked for emergency evacuation and private contract on the same night, someone had chosen who received dragons and who received delay. Ardyn's voice dropped. "Which crew?" The numbers answered. "Fifth, Ash Wing." A captain near the furnace made a strangled sound. Ardyn turned toward him. "You know that wing." The captain bowed his head. "They were assigned to Gramer Row, Majesty." "Were?" The captain swallowed. "They arrived late," Brenna said quietly. 14 died before they reached the village. The furnace flame bent low. No one spoke. Malrec's face became stone. "Casualty figures are not confirmed." The wall burned. Casualty stipends paid through Brenna Cale's private correction. Ardyn looked at Brenna. There it was again. Not apology. Not trust. Worse for him. A number where a person should have been. 14 dead. And a woman he had allowed to be publicly destroyed had paid their families through a correction account so the Treasury could pretend the delay had cost nothing. "Who bought Fifth Ash Wing that night?" Ardyn asked. The buyer seal glowed black. Malrec's treasurer ring flashed. The numbers crawled toward it. He pulled his hand back too fast. Brenna saw. So did Ardyn. Malrec recovered. "Majesty, I advise suspending this furnace anomaly until coronation auditors can cleanse the vault." Brenna laughed softly. "You burned the ledger. Now you want to audit the ash." The living numbers rose higher. They climbed over the wall, across the ceiling, down the bronze furnace grate. One by one, they formed a ring around Malrec's shadow. The buyer seal cracked. Not open. Only enough for the first name to begin walking out. Merchant House. Then the treasurer's seal burned black and swallowed the rest. But one ember escaped. It crawled across the floor to Ardyn's boot and wrote 2 words in fire. Enemy currency. The ember at Ardyn's boot stained the vault floor green. Not gold. Not crown red. Green. Every treasurer in the room knew what that meant before anyone dared say it aloud. Enemy currency did not burn the same as royal coin. It carried salt metal from eastern ports, black ash from raider furnaces, and a bitter green flame that no lawful dragon treasury accepted without quarantine record. Brenna Cale watched Lord Treasurer Malrec Dain see the color and hide his fear behind procedure. "Foreign currency," he said. "Not enemy currency. Border markets use mixed coin under emergency conditions." The living number at Ardyn's boot flared brighter. Enemy currency. It did not shout. It did not explain. It held. Ardyn looked down at it, then at Malrec. What foreign payment entered the treasury the night Fifth Ash Wing was delayed? Malrec spread his gloved hands. "Majesty, if every scorched numeral is treated as evidence, then no treasury law stands. These are burned remains, not witnesses." Brenna said, "Numbers do not witness. They balance." The furnace breathed hot behind her. Ardyn turned slightly. "Then balance it." The order struck harder than she expected. For 7 years, men had ordered her to balance what they had already broken. This was different, only because the king had finally asked in front of those who benefited from the imbalance. She did not move. "No." The vault went still. Ardyn's gold eyes narrowed. "No, I will not rebuild a treasury account while the villages remain unrepaid." Malrec seized on it. "There. Refusal of crown duty." Brenna looked at him. "Crown duty is not a bucket you hand to the woman standing under the leak." A few scribes lowered their eyes. Ardyn did not. The living numbers crawled between them, restless and hot. "What repayment?" he asked. Brenna's voice stayed flat. Gramer Row lost 14 before Fifth Ash Wing arrived. Ashford sold winter tools to pay for dragon oil you had already collected through border tax. Lowbell Ford buried 3 evacuation deaths under my correction account because the Treasury denied their protection claim. Malrec interrupted. Those claims were incomplete. They were incomplete because their witnesses were dead. The furnace flame bent sideways. Ardyn's face went colder. Not softer. Colder was safer. It meant the king was still standing inside command, not regret. "Show the payment," he said. The ember numbers moved. They gathered at the base of the wall, beneath the cracked buyer seal. Green fire threaded through red gold figures, dragging out a column Brenna had never been allowed to open fully. Private flight payment same night as Gramer Row delay. Below it, the first sum appeared. 40,000 Eastern salt marks. A merchant lord near the back made a choking sound. Malrec turned sharply. Silence. Too sharply. Ardyn heard it. "So the sum is familiar," he said. Malrec's mouth tightened. Large sums are always familiar to treasury officers. Brenna stepped closer to the burning column. Heat licked the hem of her plain black gown, but the numbers did not burn her. They parted around her skirts like angry insects that knew the difference between the hand that wrote and the hand that stole. "Coin does not accuse," she said. "It remembers mint." The green numbers unfolded. A seal formed inside them, a hooked scale over 3 waves. The room shifted. Even the dragonflight captain whispered, "House fair, market." Ardyn's eyes sharpened. "That house trades through enemy ports," Malrec said. "Through contested ports." Brenna looked at him. Gramer Row was contested too. They received delay. The merchants received wings. The numbers burned brighter. Dragonflight protection sold to house Fair Market. Malrec moved before anyone else did. Not toward Brenna. Toward the furnace lever. Ardyn caught his wrist. The vault froze. Malrec looked down at the Dragon King's hand on him, then slowly back up. "Majesty, if the furnace is not sealed, corrupted figures may spread into coronation stores." Ardyn did not release him. "Or into memory." That was the first sentence all night that sounded almost like understanding. Brenna did not let it reach her. Understanding after burning was still late. The living numbers climbed higher. The column of green currency split into 2 paths. One path crawled toward House Fair Market. The other turned back toward the treasury seal, then downward toward a ledger mark Brenna knew too well. Her own. She stopped breathing. Malrec saw her face and smiled faintly again. "There," he said softly. "Your seal." Ardyn's gaze shifted to the mark. Brenna forced herself not to step back. "Yes. Mine." Malrec's smile widened. At last, the numbers surrounded her seal. Then they opened it. Not as accusation. As container. Inside her mark lay a hidden chain of debt transfers, all moved beneath her name after the private payment entered the vault. Emergency shortages, border deficits, pilot delay fines, casualty stipends. Every ugly cost caused by the sold dragonflight had been rolled under Brenna Cale's correction accounts. The court began to understand. Not enough, but enough to become afraid. Brenna's voice came quieter now. "I carried the blame, because someone had to keep paying the living while you hid what killed them." Ardyn released Malrec's wrist slowly. The treasurer stepped back, adjusting his sleeve as if dignity could mend the moment. The green numbers crawled across the wall one final time and formed a line above Brenna's seal. Enemy payment entered before Brenna Cale's correction. Then a second line burned beneath it. Losses moved into her name afterward. The line burned above Brenna Cale's name, like a brand no court could pretend not to read. Losses moved into her name afterward. For 7 years, she had carried correction accounts as if they were sacks of stone tied to her spine. Pilot delay fines, widow stipends, dragon oil advances, emergency ash rations, repairs to wings that arrived late because private merchants had bought the sky first. Every number had been placed under her seal until the court could look at one woman and call a kingdom's hunger mismanagement. Lord Treasurer Malrec Dain adjusted his glove. That small gesture almost broke her composure. He had sold dragonflight protection, buried the losses, moved the blame into her name, and still had the grace to worry about ash on silk. Dragon King Ardyn Voss looked from Brenna's seal to the burning wall. Who authorized the transfer into her correction accounts? Malrec answered smoothly. Emergency consolidations are made by Treasury Office during unstable ledgers. Brenna said, That is not a name. The words were quiet. They still reached him. Ardyn glanced at her. For one breath. Something passed between them. Not trust. Not apology, but recognition. She had said to him what he had failed to say to Malrec sooner. The numbers crawled again. They gathered at the bottom of the wall, forming small village seals in fire. Ashford, Gramer Row, Lowbell Ford. Then more followed. Vare Hollow, North Kiln, Old Sable Road. Brenna's chest tightened. Those names were not accounts to her. They were cold letters from headmen written by candle stubs. Smoke-stained claims from mothers whose roofs had burned. Dragon captains asking who would pay their crews after flying without formal seal. Healers requesting ash salve for burns the treasury did not want counted until after coronation. Malrec saw the villages forming and spoke quickly. Regional claims remain under review. No crown repayment is owed until verified. The ember numbers turned, not toward him, toward the central treasury seal. One column rose beneath the village names. Border repayment approved. A second column formed beside it. Payment withheld. A third line burned hotter than the rest. Coronation surplus preserved. The vault changed. Not loudly. No one gasped this time. That was worse. Nobles began calculating how much they had praised the surplus. How many speeches had mentioned Ardyn's stable treasury? How many merchants had toasted the strength of a coronation budget built from unpaid villages and delayed dead? Ardyn's face went still. Brenna looked at him and knew he understood. This was the number he had wanted clean. This was why Malrec had needed her ledger gone before Crownfire. A hollow treasury could be forgiven if named early. A beautiful surplus built from stolen repayment could poison a reign before it began. Malrec's voice sharpened. A preserved surplus protects the crown. Repayments delayed 3 days before coronation do not mean theft. Brenna looked at him. 3 days? The numbers answered. Delayed 9 months. A burned silence opened under the vault. Ardyn turned on Malrec. 9 months? Malrec lifted his chin. Border audits were incomplete. Brenna stepped closer to the wall. They were complete. The living numbers slid aside, revealing rows of receipt marks. Civilian witness thumbprints. Dragon captain wing stamps. Healer seals. Ash warden reports. Every claim had been checked. Every loss counted. Every repayment approved and then held behind treasury order. Ardyn's hand closed. Scale shadow moved at his throat. Malrec saw it and bowed his head just enough to appear respectful. Majesty, if those funds had been released before coronation, enemies would have read weakness in the treasury. Brenna turned to him fully. The villages already read weakness in their empty granaries. Sentiment again. No, she said. Arithmetic. The word struck the furnace. The numbers flared. Ardyn looked at Brenna. Recalculate the treasury. She laughed once. It hurt coming out. No. The Dragon King's eyes hardened. Brenna. There it was again. Her name in his mouth. Official and dangerous. As if a king could still command a woman whose ledger he had let burn. She faced him. I will not recalculate your coronation treasury until the villages are repaid first. Malrec stepped forward. Refusal, under crown order. Brenna did not look away from Ardyn. Yes. The vault went still. She let them hear it. Let every noble hear that she was not hiding behind technicalities or tears. She was refusing plainly, in front of fire and crown and debt. I balanced your emergency flights, she said. I carried your shortages. I paid captains when your treasurer called protection inconvenient. I buried no village. I erased no corpse. But I will not make your crown look stable while Ashford sells winter tools and Gramer Row buries 14 names under unpaid ash. Ardyn did not answer quickly. That was wise. Too late. but wise. Malrec's voice cut in. Majesty, this is extortion. Brenna turned her head. No. Extortion is selling dragon wings to enemy merchants, while border villages wait for rescue. The green numbers at Ardyn's boot flared. The sealed buyer column cracked wider. Not fully. Enough to reveal a line of merchant script beneath the enemy currency mark. House Ver market payment, routed through treasury surplus. Malrec vent pale. Ardyn read it once. Then the living numbers climbed higher, burning into the gold seal above the furnace. Village repayment used to hide enemy flight sail. The gold treasury seal began to melt, not from furnace heat, from the numbers. They crawled through the carved dragon crest, like living coals through wax, burning every clean curve into something jagged and honest. Village repayment used to hide enemy flight. Sail remained high above the furnace, bright enough that no noble could look at Brenna Cale without also seeing the villages behind her name. Ashford, Graymer Row, Low Bell Ford. Names the court had treated as expense marks. Names that now burned like witnesses. Lord Treasurer Malrec Dain recovered with the speed of a man who had survived many near exposures by reaching for procedure before anyone reached for truth. Majesty, he said, these figures are unstable. If village repayment is questioned before coronation, treasury confidence collapses. I advise immediate sealing of the vault. Brenna looked at the furnace, then at Ardyn. If he seals this vault, she said, the villages stay unpaid. Malrec's mouth tightened. They are recorded as paid. The numbers stilled. Every ember on the wall paused, as if the whole vault had inhaled. Ardyn turned slowly. Recorded as paid? Malrec did not step back. Repayment orders were completed under treasury seal. Brenna's throat went cold. There it was. The missing column. She had seen the approval marks. She had seen the delay marks. She had not seen completion receipts because Malrec's office had sealed them above her account rank. The living numbers moved again. Not quickly. Deliberately. They formed a new column beneath the village names. Repayment status. Completed. A second line appeared under it. Coin transfer. Sealed. A third. Civilian witness. Blank. The vault went silent. Not shocked. Caught. Brenna stepped closer to the wall. No. The word came out softer than she wanted. Not weakness. Memory. She remembered the last Ashford letter. A woman named Tessa Marr had written on grain cloth because paper cost too much. We have received word that repayment was approved. No coin has arrived. The North Mill is closed. We sold the brass stove. Tell us if approval means nothing. Approval means nothing. Brenna had kept that line folded in her sleeve for 3 weeks, until Malrec confiscated her correspondence as account contamination. Ardyn looked at the burning words. How can repayment be completed without civilian witness? Malrec answered, emergency compensation may be routed through noble estate custody when villages lack secure treasury halls. Brenna turned on him. Estate custody is not payment. It is recognized. Transfer. To whom? Malrec's eyes cooled. To lawful regional stewards. The numbers answered before Ardyn could. A regional steward. Lord Halvan Mere. A nobleman near the back stiffened. Brenna knew the name. Halvan Mere owned 3 winter granaries and none of the grief that passed through them. His estate had received dragonflight contracts twice. His merchants supplied furnace coal. His wife wore Lobel silver at court. Ardyn's gaze cut toward him. Lord Halvan bowed too late. Malrec spoke quickly. Regional stewards are standard distribution holders. Brenna said, Then where are the village receipts? No one answered. The furnace roared. The numbers climbed higher, spreading across the vault ceiling now. Receipt marks appeared in flame. Spaces where thumbprints should have been. Empty circles. Blank witness seals. Unpressed wax. One after another. Ashford. Blank. Graymer Row. blank. Low Belford, blank. Vare Hollow, blank. North Kiln, blank. Old Sable Road, blank. Every village marked paid. No village marked received. Brenna felt anger rise so sharply, she had to press one hand against her skirt to keep from trembling. Not because the court had lied, because they had used the language of relief to finish the theft. Ardyn saw her hand move. He looked at it, then at her face. Still no apology. Good. An apology now would have been ash over a wound still open. Who signed completion? He asked. Malrec did not answer fast enough. The numbers did. Completion sealed by Treasurer Office. Malrec lifted his chin. My office signs thousands of completions. Brenna looked at him. Then one more truth should not frighten you. His face hardened. She turned to Ardyn. Ask for civilian witness. Malrec cut in. Majesty, civilians cannot be summoned into the Treasury Furnace vault during crown fire preparation. Brenna laughed once, without warmth. Of course not. The vault is safe enough for stolen villages, but not for the people stolen from. Ardyn's scale shadow pulsed at his throat. This time, when he spoke, the vault heard the dragon in him open the outer witness doors. Malrec went pale. Majesty, that has not been done in 3 reigns. Then it is overdue. The guards hesitated. Malrec turned to them. No treasury door opens during active audit without treasurer approval. Ardyn looked at him. The furnace flame bent low. I am the Dragon King. Malrec's voice lowered. Not crowned until 3 days from now. The words struck the vault like a hidden blade. The nobles stopped breathing. Brenna looked at Ardyn and understood the trap Malrec had been holding back. Before coronation, Ardyn's treasury authority still required treasurer countersign for sealed vault law. Malrec had chosen this room, this hour, this fire, because the king was powerful enough to frighten people, but not yet crowned enough to open every lock alone. Ardyn understood it too. For one breath, rage moved across his face. Then he looked at Brenna. What opens the witness doors? She did not soften at the question, but she answered. An unpaid civilian claim named by living account. Malrec stepped forward. Do not. Brenna looked at the burning wall. Ashford. The numbers flared. A line of ember figures broke from the village column and crawled down the vault wall toward the sealed outer doors. They arranged themselves across the black iron in a shape no treasurer could call distortion. Ashford repayment marked complete. Civilian receipt absent. Witness claim unsettled. The first outer lock cracked. Then the numbers formed one more line, brighter than all the rest. The treasury sealed payment without the people paid. The first outer lock cracked like bone. Every noble in the Treasury Furnace vault turned toward the witness doors. No one had opened those doors during an active audit in 3 reigns. They were not grand doors. That made them more dangerous. Black iron, plain hinges, no dragon crest, no noble carving. They had been built for people who came with burned hands, missing receipts, unpaid claims, and no permission to enter rooms where their suffering had already been balanced without them. Brenna Cale kept her eyes on the Ashford line, burning across the iron. The treasury sealed payment, without the people paid. Lord Treasurer Malrec Dain moved first. Majesty, opening civilian witness during crown fire preparation will destabilize every coronation account in the kingdom. Dragon King Ardyn Voss did not look at him. Then they were already unstable. A second lock cracked. Malrec's face tightened. You do not yet hold full crowned authority over sealed treasury law. No, Ardyn said. But the living account opened an unpaid claim. Brenna heard the shift. Not apology. Not rescue. Law moving because the numbers had left Malrec no clean wall to hide behind. The third lock split open. Cold air rushed into the furnace vault. Not palace air. Outside air. Smoke, wet wool, ash-stained travel cloth, and the sour grief of people who had waited too long beneath doors that never opened. A woman stood beyond the threshold, thin, weathered, dark-haired beneath a torn brown hood. One hand clutched a folded strip of grain cloth. Behind her waited 3 others. An old man with a burned cheek, a young woman holding an empty coin pouch, and a boy with winter-red hands wrapped in bandaged linen. Brenna knew the woman before she spoke. This Samar. Ashford. The letter in grain cloth. Malrec's voice sharpened. No civilian crosses that threshold until identified. Tessa lifted the cloth in her hand. You marked us paid. The vault went silent. She did not bow to Malrec. She did not bow to Ardyn either. Her eyes found Brenna. For one breath, Brenna could not move. Tessa Mar had been a line in her hidden correspondence for months. A village claimant. A name under emergency dragonflight costs. A woman who wrote that approval meant nothing if no coin arrived. Seeing her standing there made the numbers heavier, because arithmetic had finally put a face inside the room. Ardyn turned to Brenna. You know her. Brenna's voice stayed steady with effort. Ashford witness claimant. Malrec stepped forward. That claim was completed through regional stewardship. Tessa looked at him. Then show me the steward who brought coin. Lord Halvan shifted near the back. The living numbers noticed. A row of ember digits broke from the Ashford column and crawled across the floor toward him. Halvan tried to step away, but the numbers circled his boots, forming a ring of red-gold sums. Regional steward. Lord Halvan, payment received. Civilian receipt absent. Tessa turned toward him slowly. You received Ashford's coin? Halvan's mouth opened. Funds were held for structured distribution. The old man behind Tessa gave a broken laugh. Structured? We sold roof beams for flour. Malrec cut in. Regional shortages are tragic, but not proof of theft. Brenna looked at the ember ring around Halvan. Then let the numbers show custody movement. The figures rose. Not high, only to waist height, burning in the air like a ledger page without paper. The Ashford repayment split into 3 paths. One path marked dragonflight debt. One marked winter grain. One marked reconstruction ash. All 3 moved first to Halvan estate seal, then stopped. No village receipt. No witness mark. No thumbprint. The numbers darkened. From Halvan's estate seal, a new line crawled backward into the treasury wall, not toward Ashford, but toward the coronation vault column. Coronation reserve augmented. Ardyn went still. The furnace flame lowered, as if listening. Malrec spoke too quickly. Temporary reserve placement. Perfectly lawful before distribution. Tessa's voice was flat. Our mill froze. No one answered. She stepped closer to the threshold but did not enter fully. My brother died waiting for dragon salve you marked delivered. My mother burned grain husks for heat. We received 1 crate of cracked barley with Lord Halvan's crest on it and a note calling it generosity. The empty coin pouch in the young woman's hand shook. Brenna closed her eyes once, not to hide tears, to keep rage from making her voice useless. When she opened them, she looked at Ardyn. This is why I will not recalculate your treasury first. He held her gaze. Late understanding moved behind his eyes, but he did not speak it. Good. Let it stay late. The living numbers climbed higher, dragging Ashford's payment trail into the gold treasury seal. The green enemy currency from House Vare Market pulsed faintly beside it, and for one terrible breath, both sums touched the same reserve column. Money taken from unpaid villages, and money earned by selling dragonflight protection elsewhere. The vault wall burned with the joined account. Ashford repayment held under estate custody. Estate custody returned to coronation reserve. Tessa Mar looked at the words. Then at Ardyn. Is that what our hunger bought? Ardyn's hand tightened at his side. Malrec said, Majesty, do not answer a civilian accusation. Inside a contaminated audit. Brenna spoke first. It is not contaminated because she entered. It was contaminated because she was kept out. The numbers flared. A final line walked out of the furnace, brighter than the rest, and climbed above the witness doors. Ashford coin melted into Coronation Crown Fire Reserve. The Crown Fire Reserve pulsed behind the Treasury wall like a second furnace. Ashford coin melted into Coronation Crown Fire Reserve. Those words burned above the witness doors, while Tessa Marr stood beneath them with an empty coin pouch and a face that had learned not to expect mercy from rooms made of gold. Brenna Cale looked at the line until the heat blurred it. There was something obscene about the truth. Once it became simple. A village had gone hungry, so a coronation could look whole. A woman had been blamed so noble hands could stay clean. A ledger had been burned because ink was easier to destroy than witnesses. Lord Treasurer Malrec Dain turned to the guards. "Remove the civilians. Seal the witness doors. This proceeding has exceeded lawful audit bounds." The furnace guards hesitated. They were trained to obey Treasury authority inside the vault. Not the king. Not always. Not before coronation. Treasury law was older than Ardyn's reign, and deliberately tangled enough that men like Malrec could hide a crime inside a procedure and call it stability. Ardyn Voss's voice cut through the heat. "No one removes them." Malrec bowed his head with false regret. "Majesty, until crown, fire completion, sealed Treasury law requires my countersign." Ardyn's scale shadow moved along his throat, dark and gold beneath the skin. "You have used that word too often tonight." "Law?" "Sealed." The living numbers shivered. Brenna felt them before she understood why. They were moving under the floor now. Beneath her boots, beneath Ardyn's, beneath Malrec's polished black shoes, tiny ember digits crawled between cracks in the basalt, as if the vault had roots of fire. Malrec noticed and stepped away from Brenna. "She is controlling them." Brenna gave him a tired look. "If I controlled them, you would have burned sooner." The old man behind Tessa made a rough sound that was almost a laugh. Malrec's eyes flashed. "Majesty, she threatens a royal officer." "No," Ardyn said. She answered one. That should not have warmed anything in Brenna. It did, and she hated that it did. Not because he defended her. Defending her now was easy. The numbers had made cowardice expensive. What hurt was remembering the morning, when he had not opened her ledger, when her name had been official enough to condemn but not human enough to question. The ember roots reached the base of the furnace. Then the burned scraps of her ledger stirred inside the dragon fire. Ash rose, not pages, not whole, only flakes of blackened leather, curled corners, fragments of columns half-eaten by flame. They floated out through the bronze grate and arranged themselves in the air before Brenna, trembling like wounded birds. Malrec went still. For the first time all night, his composure did not return fast enough. Ardyn saw. "What is that?" he asked. Brenna stared at the blackened fragments. "My ledger, Mark." "That ledger has no lawful standing," Malrec said too quickly. "It was a private soot book kept outside royal balance." The ash fragments spun. The living numbers climbed over them, red gold light threading through burned holes until a seal appeared in the air. Not Brenna's personal mark, not the Treasury office seal. A circle of 3 hands around a flame. Tessa Marr gasped softly. Brenna's breath caught. She had seen that mark only once, pressed faintly into the oldest page of the soot ledger when she inherited it from the dead ash accountant before her. He had told her it was an outdated witness stamp, something ceremonial, something no court honored anymore. Malrec had known better. The numbers formed around the ash seal. Civilian witness ledger, registered under border relief law. The vault erupted in whispers. Malrec turned white with rage. "Obsolete law." Brenna looked at him slowly. "Obsolete is not void." His mouth snapped shut. Ardyn's eyes were on the ash seal. "Explain." Brenna could barely hear past the blood in her ears. For 7 years they had called it her soot ledger, her private habit, her untidy midnight book, her emotional record of ugly expenses proper Treasury clerks would have cleaned away. But if the mark was true, the ledger had never been merely hers. It had been the village's witness. She swallowed. A civilian witness ledger records claims when royal treasury access is denied or unsafe. It can hold debt until a crown officer answers it. Malrec said, "It requires living civilian claimants." Tessa stepped forward. "Ashford is living." The young woman beside her lifted the empty coin pouch. "Barely." The numbers flared at the word. Barely. The vault seemed to understand that survival was not the same as repayment. Ardyn looked from Tessa to Brenna. Why was this not in Malrec's report? Brenna's laugh came out low and bitter. Because then burning it would be more than destruction of corrupted evidence. The ash seal turned. A new line formed beneath it. Burning civilian witness record. Before claim settlement is treasury violation. Malrec's voice hardened. The ledger was submitted under fraud charge. Brenna looked at him. By you. And accepted. By Crown Review. The words landed where he aimed them. Ardyn did not move. But something in his face shut tight. Yes. Accepted by Crown Review. Accepted by the king who had chosen a summary over soot. Brenna did not soften the silence for him. The living numbers wrapped around the ash seal and descended toward her wrist. For one breath she feared they would burn her, but they only circled the ink scar where years of soot had settled into her skin. Then the ash seal pressed itself into the air above her palm. Not ownership. Authority. The numbers wrote. Witness accountant recognized. Brenna Cale. Malrec snapped. She cannot hold witness authority while under treasury charge. The numbers answered before Brenna could. Treasury charge depends on destroyed record. Destroyed record stands. Ardyn stepped between Malrec and Brenna before the treasurer could move closer. It was a small movement, too late to be trusted. Still large enough for the vault to see. Malrec's eyes narrowed. Majesty, choose carefully. If you uphold her authority, she may challenge every sealed coronation account. Ardyn did not look away from Brenna. For the first time, he asked, instead of commanded, "What will you challenge first?" Brenna looked at Tessa, then at the village names burning behind her, then at the crown fire reserve pulsing with stolen hunger. Her voice did not shake. The reserve. The numbers surged toward the treasury wall. The gold seal cracked open, and deep inside the crown fire column, another hidden line began to crawl out. Reserve contains enemy payment held for Lord Treasurer's private vault. The crown fire reserve opened like a wound. Behind the cracked treasury seal, numbers moved in layers Brenna Cale had never been allowed to see. Red gold crown sums, green enemy currency, black debt marks. Village repayment figures pressed flat beneath ceremonial surplus, like bones under marble. Then the hidden line crawled out fully. Reserve contains enemy payment held for Lord Treasurer's private vault. No one in the Treasury Furnace vault breathed. Lord Treasurer Malrec Dain looked almost calm. That was how Brenna knew he was most afraid. He turned his head slowly toward Dragon King Ardyn Voss. Majesty, private vault references are beyond civilian witness authority. Brenna stepped forward. Not if the private vault holds village repayment. Malrec's eyes cut to her. You have no authority to make that claim. The ash seal above her palm burned brighter. Witness accountant recognized. Brenna Cale. Tessa Marr stood beneath the witness doors. Her empty coin pouch clutched so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Behind her, the other Ashford claimants watched the vault with the frozen disbelief of people seeing their hunger written in royal fire. Ardyn did not look at Malrec. He looked at Brenna. What does witness authority allow? The question was quiet. That made it dangerous. Brenna's answer came without hesitation. A challenged reserve may be traced, if unpaid civilian claims are present. Malrec snapped. Only with crowned consent. Ardyn said, You reminded me I am not yet crowned. Yes, Majesty. Then stop pretending. Crown law protects you. Malrec's mouth closed. Ardyn turned to the living numbers. Trace the reserve. The numbers did not move. Brenna did not either. Ardyn understood the silence a moment too late. He looked back at her. Brenna met his gaze. They do not answer command. They answer account. A muscle moved in his jaw. There it was again. The old habit of kings, reaching first for order. But this time, he stopped before making it worse. "What must be named?" he asked. Brenna turned toward the burning wall. Ashford repayment. Gramer Row casualty stipends. Lowbell Ford. Evacuation debt. House Vare. Market enemy payment. Crown Fire Reserve. Treasurer private vault. Each name landed like a hammer. The numbers flared at every one. Then they moved. They poured down the wall in burning streams, crossing the floor in lines too precise to be called magic by anyone who feared arithmetic. One trail began at Ashford's unpaid claim, another at Gramer Row's casualty stipends, another at the green enemy currency. All three entered the coronation reserve column. Then all three left it, not toward the villages, toward the iron stair beneath Malrec's treasury dais. The basalt floor split with a low groan. A hidden vault mouth appeared beneath the treasurer's feet. Gold light rose from below. Malrec stepped back. "That is a sealed office chamber." Brenna's voice was cold. "Then why does Ashford's hunger know the way?" Ardyn descended the first step before anyone else could speak. Malrec moved fast. "Majesty, do not enter a treasurer's private vault during an active civilian challenge. It will void the coronation balance." Ardyn paused. For one breath, everyone saw the trap. If he entered, the balance could be void. If the balance voided, the coronation might be delayed. If the coronation delayed, rival dragon houses could challenge his right to crown fire. Malrec had not only hidden theft, he had tied it to Ardyn's throne. Brenna saw the cost settle across Ardyn's face. This was the moment men like Malrec counted on, when justice became expensive enough for kings to call it complicated. Ardyn stepped down. The vault seemed to exhale. Brenna followed, but stopped when he lifted one hand. Not to command her back, to ask, "Will the witness accountant enter?" Brenna's throat tightened despite herself. Too late. Still different. "Yes," she said. "With the civilian claimants watching." Malrec's voice sharpened. "Impossible." Tessa Marr stepped across the threshold. The empty pouch swung at her side like a bell without sound. The private vault below was smaller than the chamber above, and richer in every wrong way. Chests lined the walls, each sealed with treasury wax. Crown bars lay stacked beneath dragonbone shelves. Merchant contracts rested in silver tubes. A private furnace, narrow and blue-flamed, burned beside Malrec's writing table. The living numbers crawled down after them. They spread over the chests. One seal burst, then another. Inside the first chest lay coin wrapped in estate cloth. Ashford repayment. Inside the second lay casualty silver marked for Gramer Row widows. Inside the third lay dragon oil credits, owed to Lowbell Ford. Tessa made a sound as if someone had struck her. Brenna did not touch the coins. She wanted to. Not for herself. To put them into Tessa's hands, into every empty village chest, every burned mill, every house that had sold its roof beams for flour. But witness was not repayment yet. She had learned that, too, brutally. The numbers climbed Malrec's writing table. A contract tube rolled open. Green fire spilled out. The buyer name finally appeared in full. House Vare Market, Eastern Port Alliance. Beneath it, another line formed. Protection purchase. 5th Ash Wing. Then another. Route cleared through Gramer delay. Ardyn's face changed. Not with shock, with something worse. Understanding that it arrived too late to save 14 people. Malrec stood at the vault mouth above them, no longer smiling. Those contracts were strategic concessions. Brenna looked up at him. "You sold the sky. I preserved the treasury. You sold the sky, while villages burned under it." His eyes flashed. "Villages can be rebuilt. A crown cannot. Ardyn's voice came low. "Say that again." Malrec went still. The numbers did not need him to. They had heard enough. They surged up the private vault walls, across the stair, into the furnace chamber above. Every hidden account, every delayed repayment, every enemy route and private seal ignited into one column of living fire. The final line burned across both vaults at once. Lord Treasurer Malrec Dain sold dragonflight protection to enemy merchants while Graymer Row burned. The final accusation burned through both vaults until even the dragonfire seemed smaller beside it. Lord Treasurer Malrec Dain sold dragonflight protection to enemy merchants while Graymer Row burned. No noble spoke. No scribe moved. Above the private vault stair, Lord Treasurer Malrec Dain stood with one hand on the iron rail and the other closed around nothing. For the first time that night, he looked less like a man protecting law and more like a thief surprised by light. Dragon King Ardyn Voss ascended from the private vault with ash on his boots and fury held so tightly it had become stillness. Brenna Cale followed beside him, not behind him. Tessa Marr came after, clutching the edge of the chest that held Ashford's stolen repayment, as if she feared it might vanish if she blinked. The living numbers crawled with them. They carried coins in columns of fire. Ashford repayment, Graymer Row casualty silver, Lowbell Ford evacuation debt, Dragon oil credits, widow stipends. Every hidden sum moved out of Malrec's private vault and arranged itself across the main chamber floor in burning order. The Treasury Furnace vault had become what Malrec had feared most, a room no longer organized by rank, but by debt. Ardyn stopped before the treasurer. Guards. The furnace guards did not move. Malrec's mouth twitched. They answered treasury seal inside this vault. Ardyn's scale shadow rose along his throat, dark gold beneath the skin. Then let the treasury seal answer first. The living numbers surged toward the carved seal above the furnace. They circled it once, twice, then burned through the gold dragon crest where Malrec's office mark had been fused for 3 reigns. The seal cracked. Not destroyed, changed. A new mark formed inside the old one. 3 hands around a flame, the civilian witness seal Brenna had seen rising from the burned ledger. The guards looked at it, then bowed to Ardyn. Malrec's face drained. Ardyn said, "Take him." Malrec stepped back. "Majesty, a public seizure before crownfire will fracture the treasury houses." "No," Brenna said. Everyone turned toward her. She looked at Malrec, at the nobles who had praised the surplus, at the scribes who had stayed silent, at the chests of stolen village coin glowing under living numbers. "What fractures a treasury," she said, "is when hunger is counted as stability." The numbers flared. Guards seized Malrec by both arms. He did not struggle at first. Men like him rarely believed touch applied to them until iron closed. Then rage broke through his polish. "You think villages will save a crown?" he snapped at Ardyn. "You think a clerk's soot and a few starving claimants can hold dragon houses loyal? I kept your coronation alive." Ardyn stepped close enough that the furnace light turned his eyes molten. "You kept my coronation fed on unpaid graves." Malrec looked at Brenna then, and hatred stripped him bare. "She should have stayed silent." Brenna's voice was quiet. "I did stay silent. That was how long it took the numbers to learn to speak." The living embers rose behind her, thousands of figures suspended like a burning crown no one could wear. Ardyn turned the gathered court. By dragon authority and living account, Lord Treasurer Malrec Dain is stripped of seal, office, and vault claim. Every noble house named in hidden custody will stand public debt review before civilian witnesses from the villages owed. A noblewoman gasped. "Majesty, civilian witnesses cannot judge noble accounts." Brenna looked at her. "Then noble accounts should stop eating civilian coin." Tessa Marr stepped forward. The room made way for her this time. She stood before the open chest and did not bow. Ashford receives first. Ardyn looked at Brenna. Not Malrec. Not the nobles. Brenna. What must be done? He asked. She felt the weight of the question. It was not romance, not forgiveness, not enough. But it was the first time the Dragon King had asked how repair worked, before asking how his crown would look. Repay the villages before recalculation, she said. Every coin, every casualty stipend, every delayed flight wage, every salve claim, every witness must mark receipt by their own hand. Ardyn nodded once. Done. No, Brenna said. The vault held its breath. Not done, she said. Recorded. For a moment. Something almost painful moved across his face. Then Ardyn bowed his head, not deeply. Enough for the court to see. Recorded. The living numbers rushed to the wall and wrote the new law in lines of steady fire. No dragon treasury record may be sealed without civilian witness, when civilian debt is claimed. No repayment may be marked complete without receipt from the people paid. No ledger may be burned before the claims inside it are answered. The furnace went quiet, not dead. Listening, Brenna looked at the law until the heat blurred her eyes. She had not wanted power. She had wanted accuracy. She had wanted villages alive, captains paid, widows named, and men who sold protection to stop calling rescue theft. Ardyn came to stand beside her, leaving a careful distance. I never looked at the numbers, he said. She did not turn. I know. I trusted the men who blamed you. I know. The two words hurt more than accusation, because they carried no performance, no dramatic pardon, no easy absolution for a king who had allowed her proof to burn. Ardyn's voice lowered. I will answer for that. Brenna finally looked at him. To me last. He understood. His gaze moved to Tessa, to the Ashford claimants, to the village names burning across the vault walls. To them first. Only then did Brenna breathe fully. Tessa pressed her thumb into warm receipt wax beside Ashford's repayment line. The old man followed. The young woman with the empty pouch received the first coin from the chest and wept without sound. One by one, village witnesses came through the open doors, summoned by living numbers that crawled through palace corridors and found the unpaid. By dawn, the Treasury Furnace vault no longer smelled like erased ink. It smelled like hot wax, iron keys, dragon fire, and coin finally leaving the hands that had stolen it. Brenna stood before the furnace with soot on her palms, while the last ember figures returned to the ashes of her ledger. They did not vanish. They settled into a new book placed on the witness table, its cover black, plain, and unadorned. Ardyn touched nothing. He only asked, Will you keep the ledger? Brenna rested her hand on the cover. For the villages, she said. And for the crown? She looked at him then, long enough that the court remembered silence could be judgment. For the crown, she said, when it learns to be counted honestly. Ardyn lowered his head again. Outside, the first coronation bells began to ring. They sounded different through the open witness doors. Less like victory, more like debt being named. And in the Treasury Furnace vault, the burned numbers glowed softly beneath Brenna Cale's hand, no longer crawling for justice, but waiting to make sure the kingdom kept it.